after being abandoned by a human who despised him, a street dog decides to take revenge and enlists the help of an army of dogs to find his former owner. Hey guys, welcome back. I'm NodeHat, and today we're going to recap the story of Strays movie 2023, so get ready. It's recap time. Reggie is an extremely happy and optimistic border terrier who, like most dogs, is completely obsessed with his human. He was adopted a few years ago by Doug's ex-girlfriend, and since then they have been completely inseparable. Thanks to the dog, the couple ended their relationship when Ashley found another woman's underwear in her boyfriend's house. That day, before leaving, Ashley tried to take Reggie with her, but Doug forbade her to do so because even though he didn't like the animal, the man wanted to keep him to cause even more pain for his ex-girlfriend. Despite not receiving much attention from his owner, Reg loves him and is convinced that Doug's feelings are reciprocated, so she does everything to try and please him. However, the truth is that Doug is a demented unemployed man who spends all day using illicit substances in an attempt to escape his miserable life. One day, he received an eviction notice from his apartment for not being able to pay the rent, so he had to start packing his things to move back in with his mother. Before moving, the demented man decides to abandon the dog and takes Reg to a place far away from home. At that moment, Doug throws the ball, and while the dog goes to catch it, he gets into his car and drives home. Despite being abandoned several times, Reg always finds his way back and naively returns the ball to its owner, believing that it was all part of a game. Furious at not being able to get rid of the dog, Doug decides to take him to another town, which is 3 hours away from Oakwood, and parks him in an isolated alley after throwing the ball. The man gets into the truck and Reg has to find a way to reach the toy when he finally manages to catch it. The dog realizes he's lost and starts wandering aimlessly around the unknown town at dusk, with the ball still in his mouth. Reg looks for a place to rest. Hours later, he wakes up to continue his mission, but ends up in trouble. On the way, Reg comes across 2 bully dogs who realize he's new to the area and his ball is stolen by a Doberman. However, when Reg is surrounded by troublemakers, Buggy appears and, despite his short stature, proves to be brave enough to take them on. The dog then challenges the 2 big men to a duel, but they decide to walk away. When the pair leave, Buggy asks Reggie to accompany him and asks how long he has been a street dog. However, the animal says he has a home and tells us how he ended up there, as he still believes it was all just a joke. When he hears the story of how Doug got rid of his dog, Buggy starts laughing and claims that Reg has been tricked. The truth is that he was abandoned by his owner and has now officially become a street dog. When faced with this reality, Reg is saddened, but the French bulldog says it could be the best experience of his life. So he offers to teach his new friend how to live alone on the streets. And he says that all Reggie has to do is follow his rules. The first is to learn to mark territory, which for dogs means being number 1 in things. Buggy then needs to help Reggie understand the concept of freedom. If before he was always worried about pleasing his owner, now all he has to do is please himself. The bulldog says that from now on, Reggie can do whatever he wants and decides to take her to the dog park to show her that the life of a street dog is much better than the life of pets. At this point, Buggy introduces Reg to some of his friends. Hunter is a former police dog who now works helping elderly people in a nursing home. He's the biggest dog in the neighborhood, but also the friendliest. On the other hand, Meg is a very imposing dog with an enormous talent for sniffing things out, but Jenna swapped her for a German Spitz puppy called Bella. After introducing his friends to Rag, Buggy invites him to join the gang that night, but the animal continues to believe that he needs to go back to Doug because he believes that a dog's purpose is to make his human happy. When he hears this, the bulldog is furious and says that the purpose of a dog is not to satisfy its owner's needs, but to enjoy life to the full and do whatever it wants. As a result, Buggy manages to convince Reggie to join them that night, and the group arranges to meet in front of the pizzeria. When they get there, the 4 friends wait for the moment when one of the humans drops the pizza to attack and then devour their dinner. It's Friday. The garbage is full of beer, and the dogs drink until they get dizzy. Then everyone goes to the park and plays with the automatic sprinklers, as this is one of the things those dogs love to do the most. At the end of the night, they find Chester and try to invite him to join the gang, but the animal says he can't leave because he believes there is an invisible fence on the lawn of his house. At the end of the tour, the dogs come together to make a number 1 on a wall, and Reg realizes that, really, the life of a street dog can be much cooler than that of an adopted dog. At least now he doesn't have to wait several hours for Doug to take him to be human. Bug and the others are amazed to realize that the dog still loved him. The truth is that Reg never noticed that Doug despised him and always romanticized the way he was treated, because he believed that this was how the relationship between a human and his dog should be. However, when he remembers some of the moments he spent with Doug, Reg realizes that he wasn't wasn't really loved, and this leaves him heartbroken. Furious, the dog decides to go home and meet Doug again, but this time his aim is to get revenge on him and wipe out the race of the guy who hurt him. Determined to help their friend find Doug again before he moves away, Buggy and the others decide to accompany him on this journey. After a few hours of walking, the quartet is exhausted and hungry, so Maggie starts sniffing hot dogs and her friends go after her. While Buggy distracts the salesman, Reg steals some sausages and takes dinner to be shared between the 4 friends. Being the right-hand man of the group, Hunter is afraid that some human has seen what they've done, and soon afterwards countless fireworks start exploding in the sky. Frightened, the dogs run away and leave the sausages behind, as they believe this is a divine sign that they will be punished for the crime they have committed during their escape from the park. Hunter and Maggie climb onto some wooden crates and manage to jump over the fence, but Reggie and Buggy end up getting stuck on the other side to escape from there. The pair have to dig a hole and enlist the help of their friends to open the passage. However, as Reg goes under the fence, his bandana gets caught and the dog asks his friends to run away without it. At that moment, everyone refuses to leave him and unites to help the little one free himself before a group of teenagers fire more rockets. With Bug's help, Reg manages to free himself and is thrilled to learn that his friends risked their lives to save him. As everyone is exhausted from the journey, the pack decides to stop for a rest and spends the night in the forest. The next morning, they continue walking towards Oakwood, and during a conversation with Reggie, Maggie tries to convince him to abandon his plan for revenge. The dog says that Reggie should just put the past behind him and move on, but the dog has no intention of forgiving Dougie for all the harm he has done to him. Meanwhile, Buggy tries to convince Hunter to take the cone off his head, because he's always wearing that thing. However, German Doug claims that he needs to wear that cone for medical reasons, to avoid ear infections and other such problems. The dogs are distracted by the conversation when Buggy realizes that they are lost and becomes furious. Just when Bulldog thinks the situation can't get any worse, a hawk appears and he is captured. In an attempt to save him, Reg climbs onto a rock and grabs his friend's paw, but the hawk refuses to let go and manages to support the weight of the 2 dogs. Suddenly, Dennis Quaid, who has gone into the forest to watch the birds, hears Buggy barking and uses his binoculars to see what's going on. When he comes across a hawk carrying 2 puppies to its nest, he is perplexed and can hardly believe his eyes. While flying over the forest, the dogs spot the cone-shaped mountain they were looking for and then collide with a large tree. Finally, the 2 friends free themselves from the hawk's fangs and, during the fall, they are lucky enough to be supported by the branches. They can therefore reach the ground without suffering serious injuries. Now that he has survived the predator's attack, Buggy feels relieved and thanks Reggie for saving his life. All the group needs to do now is head towards the mountain, as Reggie remembers seeing that cone when he was being taken to the nearby town. A few kilometers later, the dogs come across a mushroom plantation and decide to stop for food, as they haven't eaten for a long time. As they are starving, they devour the entire crop and take a break to digest the food. However, when they decide to continue their journey, they start hallucinating and seeing things that aren't there. Suddenly, Maggie spots a burrow where she finds stuffed toys. Together with her friends, she spends a lot of time playing with those rabbits and ends up tearing them all apart. A few hours later, when the dogs wake up, they realize that the effect of the mushrooms has worn off and find several lifeless rabbits lying around. Only then does the group discover that these animals were not stuffed animals and were brutally eliminated for no reason. Regretting what he had done, Bug started digging and asked his friends to help him bury the broken bodies of those poor rabbits. Suddenly, 2 police dogs appear and Rolf begins to question them, as he senses something suspicious coming from that group. The pair say they are looking for Riley Anderson, an 8-year-old girl who got lost from a group of scouts 2 days ago. The police officer thought those street dogs might have made contact with her, but the sheriff says they are innocent. At this point, Maggie offers to help them find the girl, as she is an excellent sniffer, but Rolf declines her help. But before he leaves, he recognizes Hunter, who used to work as a police dog when he was younger. The 2 have been friends for a long time and are happy to meet up, but Hunter feels embarrassed when Rolf asks where he currently works and says that his mission now is to look after dying humans. Minutes later, the humans show up and the group is captured. That same day, they are taken to the pound and Buggy panics because he knows that no one will look for him there. The animal says he once had a human called Emma and remembers perfectly the day he was adopted. He and his owner were inseparable and played all day long. Even when Bug messed up, Emma smiled and treated him with a lot of love. However, one day, while Bug was lying on the lawn at home, Emma ran towards him and accidentally stepped on his paw. Frightened, the dog acted on impulse and bit the girl. His parents then decided to have him put down, as they considered Buggy to be an aggressive and highly dangerous dog. Luckily, the bulldog managed to escape from the veterinary clinic and has since become a street dog. Although he survived, Bug has never been able to forgive Emma and her family for what they did to him. That's why he's so keen to help Reg get revenge on Doug. The bulldog feels that it will have the chance to give humans what they deserve for abandoning their dogs. In the meantime, Maggie thinks of a strategy to escape from that kennel and spots a bunch of keys hanging on the wall. The problem is that you can't reach him, so Reggie asks all the dogs in that cell to make the number 2 on the floor. That way, when William goes inside to clean up, the dogs will have a chance to escape. As agreed, the dogs spread their licks everywhere and, seconds later, Futon spreads through the police station. Then, when Willie enters the cell to collect the scooters, he ends up slipping on a pile of them and, at that moment, the dogs run out. Before fleeing, Reg picks up a tennis ball that he finds inside the kennel and runs off with the toy in his mouth. That night, the 4 friends walk until they come across the sign of an American company responsible for delivering mail. And when he sees the picture of the letter carrier, Reg realizes that he is arriving at his old home. Before he leaves, Buggy asks why his friend has been carrying a tennis ball since he left the kennel, and Reg reveals that he doesn't want to disappoint Doug, as he's waiting for his dog to take the ball back home. At first, Reg was focused on his revenge plan, but as he gets closer to home, he realizes that he misses Doug and wants to move back in with him. The dog blames himself for being abandoned, as he always destroyed his owner's shoes and woke him up early to go for a walk. Seeing this, Buggy is disappointed and regrets risking his life to help Reg get back to Oakwood. After ripping off the dog's bandana, Buggy does number 1 on it and claims that Reg and Doug deserve each other. Saddened after hearing these harsh words from his friend, Reg picks up his little ball and leaves. In the morning, he arrives in Oakwood, while Buggy and the others try to find their way back to their town. After a few hours on the road, Bug decides to separate from Hunter and Maggie, because unlike the pair, the bulldog doesn't have a family waiting for him, so the dog decides to follow his path through the forest and suddenly comes across Riley. When he sees the girl, Bug's first thought is to run away, as she reminds him of his former owner. However, when he sees the girl crying, the dog is moved and fights against his own instincts to approach her. At that moment, he remembers that there was a lost Girl Scout that Rolf was looking for in the forest, and he starts calling his friends for help. Together, the 3 dogs start barking and manage to attract the attention of the police. Thanks to them, the girl is saved. Grateful for their excellent work, Rolf asks how he can reward them and Buggy asks for help to save his friend. However, the German Shepherd reveals that in order to track Reggie, you have to smell him first. Then Maggie remembers the bandana and runs to get it. The problem is that the bandana is all wet, so the sheriff can't identify the dog's scent. So Maggie decides to do the job and is able to detect Reggie's scent. Meanwhile, the poor dog has just arrived at Doug's house with his little ball, but can't find anyone inside. While walking around the house, he remembers how his owner treated him and decides to bury the ball in the garden before leaving. Just then, Doug appears and Reggie approaches him to tell him how he feels, even though he knows the man can't understand him. The dog reveals that in recent days, he has met real friends who have taught him what it means to be loved and valued. Now that he has found his owner again, Reg realizes that he wasn't abandoned because he was a bad dog, but because Doug is a bad man. After saying these words, Reg walks towards the door to leave, but Doug picks up a baseball bat to attack him, as he plans to get rid of the dog once and for all. At that moment, Hunter knocks down the door, and after removing the cone from his head, he attacks Doug. Meanwhile, Maggie and Bug go to check that Reg is okay, and he is thrilled to see his friends. At this point, Doug manages to push Hunter away, then Maggie bites his leg and Bug provokes him, causing him to destroy the microwave. After smashing the device, he gets even angrier and goes after Reg, but the dog manages to dodge his blows and Doug ends up taking a tumble. However, he quickly gets up and catches Reg and threatens to eliminate him, but Doug's evil plan is interrupted when Buggy jumps on his face and Maggie knocks him down, causing the demented man to fall headfirst into a bottle. While his friends hold the man down, Reg finally gets his revenge and bites the demented man's lower body. Suddenly, the flames caused by Doug's cigarette spread through the house and he loses absolutely everything he owns. Even his truck ends up being crushed by a lamppost. After this memorable revenge, Reg returns to another city with his friends, and Hunter goes back to work looking after the elderly in the nursing home. After all the challenges he faced, he gained enough self-confidence to no longer need to use the cone, and he finally had the courage to reveal his feelings for Maggie. Now they're a couple. Maggie has finally found an owner who deserves her and has become part of the the police detection squad, where she holds the position of best sniffer. After saving Riley, Bug changed his view of humans and ended up being adopted by the little girl, who showered him with love and affection every day. As for Reg, he has chosen to remain a street dog and is always in the neighborhood to have fun with his friends. His mission now is to help other dogs who have been abandoned to survive and recognize their own worth, because it's very difficult to do that when you've been rejected by those you love the most. Even though he decided to live on the streets, Reg is surrounded by people who care about him deeply and take him in whenever he needs support. What do you think of this story? Will Reg find challenges on the street? Leave your comments below. See you in the next recap here on the channel. See you there.